Hi everyone. So we're gonna get started. Okay, I hope you all can hear me. So welcome to our webinar today, Upskilling in Times of COVID-19. We're super excited to have you all here today and to take some time out of your weekend to be with us. Especially those in Malaysia being up early at 11 a.m. Great job. So some of you who are members or alumni who might already be familiar with me, but for those who have never heard of me, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Alicia, or you can call me Alice, and I'm head of alumni development here at G4G in the Malaysian chapter. And I'll also be your host for today's webinar. And just in case, if you weren't sure if you were in the right webinar session, this is the G4G webinar on career goals, upskilling in times of COVID-19. Awesome. All right, so before we proceed with our agenda for today, allow me to share a few housekeeping rules so that we all can collectively ensure a smooth webinar experience for everyone. It's just basic rules. So firstly, keep your mic turned off just to avoid any sound disturbances. And if you want to turn on your camera, feel free to do so if you're comfortable, but if you're not, that's fine. It's totally up to you. And you may ask questions throughout this session. So let's say we're talking and you have a question, feel free to just type it in the chat box and let us know. Or if you have any thoughts, just feel free to shout out in the chat box. Okay, so great, now that we have that out of the way, allow me to share the agenda that we have planned for you all today. It's gonna be an exciting 1-hour session. So now we're obviously at virtual lobby and we'll proceed with introductions to G4G and Sarah Chen. And there'll be a presentation by Sarah Chen later on and a moderated session by G4G, followed by Q&A from audience. So you'll have time to ask away all your questions then and get your questions addressed. And then closing session will end at 12. All right, so just a quick spiel on introductions. So firstly, allow me to talk about G4G, what we do. So if y'all aren't unaware yet, G4G is an international NGO that was set up in 2017 by several co-founders globally. So here at G4G, we strive to provide young women and girls around the world with the courage, vision, and skills it takes to step up into leadership positions. And webinars like these, they just help us, achieve that, but also build the community with our male allies to upskill towards our goal of eventual leadership. All right, so enough. Let's move on to introducing our speaker for today. So as you all may know, it's Sarah Chen. So she is named Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. Sarah's career spans across venture capital, VC, and innovation in Asia and the US. So she is the co-founder of the $1 Billion Fund for Women, a global consortium of venture funds that have now pledged to invest and are actively deploying beyond 1 billion towards women-founded companies to begin to address the venture investment gap, where women founders receive less than 3% of total VC funding. So going beyond the billion, her mission is now to catalyze the larger landscape of capital, ensuring the continued capacity to invest in women-founded companies by bridging venture funds and limited partner investors. All right, so without taking up much time and without further ado, allow me to play a video that will best introduce Sarah Chen to you all.
We believe at the $1 Billion Fund for Women that the pipeline of amazing women innovators is not the problem. The problem is the access to capital. And if we believe that the future of technology and the future is yet to be written, we as the entrepreneurs that have reaped the returns, we as the investors have an enormous responsibility on our shoulders to continue to find these women and fuel them.
For the women on the rise, you are the next wave. Do not underestimate yourself and always put yourself out there, even though it's scary.
Women who are with the great ideas that are going to change the way that we work. You talk about WeChat as an example. Alibaba has a co-founder, Lucy Peng, that we don't even hear about. And Financial is something that, she was very much instrumental in growing.
Woo, that was exciting. Okay, I'm sure you guys are super excited to hear from our amazing speakers. I'm not going to take up much time. Without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Sarah Chen.
Great. Thank you so much, Alice. Can you all hear me? Just a quick thumbs up.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Malaysia, and everyone else who's joined in. I'm so thrilled, and I'm glad that we actually started that video because for those of you who don't know, I'm actually in Washington, D.C. right now. So it is 11 p.m. on a Friday night, and I told Izana and Alice that only all of you girls can get me, late into this night to do this for you after really a hectic week. But some of you may know as well, I think I did want to nod a little bit before we get started here to the passing of the recent real legend of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And, she's really been a force of nature and reminds us to really push ourselves. And also, for today, I think it's really apt that all of us have come together at this time to honor her legacy by really being the best versions of ourselves, because not too long ago, there were a lot of roles and, positions in office where women were not allowed. And I was just listening into the news a little bit earlier about how, there were ads for men and classified ad sections for women. She was asked when she was, trying to get into Harvard, why she deserved to take a man's place, right? So, just a little bit of a reminder there of how far we've come. But still how far we have yet to really continue to progress and the role that we all play here, I think doing the best for yourself. And the reason why, I'm so grateful for these sort of opportunities to speak with all of you is because there's so much that you can do as an individual that you don't realize will make a big impact. And that's really been true to my story. And I'm happy to speak a little bit about that. I know the topic today is about upskilling yourself. It's a time of COVID, especially where I am. I feel it very deeply because I've been in lockdown, frankly, since, asking my husband here, since March. So, it's been tough, but, we're pulling through, and I think there's a lot of options and opportunities that arise from that. So without further ado, I will get started with my presentation. This is really going to be a quick one, and I did want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions for me, type in the chat and I will be able to respond to that. But thank you all for being here. Super excited. So number one, let's talk about upskilling yourself, right? So when we're thinking about the time that we're in, you know, I think it's hard really to not look at the world, you know, across different angles and not think about how COVID has colored it, unfortunately. And if you think about it from a perspective of businesses and companies that you're looking to join, right? What are the senior management, what are some of the things that are top of mind at this time? One of the key things is, of course, just as you are personally dealing with a lot of uncertainty about what's next, you know, when are we going to get back? And I know some of you are still in university. When are we going to get back together with our friends and do things as normal? What's going to be the future for me? I know there's a lot of uncertainty from your personal perspective, but also from a business standpoint. You know, a lot of these leaders today, including myself, are thinking about the next few months, the next year, and trying to figure out, you know, what's the pulse of the market, how are we going to respond, and what does this mean for our businesses? So even, you know, as you're thinking about applying and building your career here, just bear in mind that, you know, as a CEO, there's a lot of things that's on the other side that folks are thinking about, which would affect some of the things that I'll talk about later. But it's always good to sort of take the perspective of who you're going to be reaching out to, and sort of having that sense of, okay, what are their priorities right now, and how can I think about being the most relevant and the most compelling person and addition to the new team that I'm looking to join. Companies are responding to demands, as I said, to a rapidly changing market, right? So it's not only for the moment, which is, okay, how do we plug the gap? How do we address some of the key issues that are pressing right now? You know, there's been a lot of furloughing and cases where we had to pivot and things like that. But beyond that, you know, I think what's incumbent on a lot of leaders at this point in time is, how do we then build resilience for the long term? It's been clear for a lot of businesses that have had to shut down that what they've done in the past can no longer work. And I think what's been powerful to really understand is this vision of what a new normal is. You know, I think it's been, especially in DC, I've been very close to understanding the racial reckoning and the recent sort of awareness that has come into the industry, not just from a financial industry, but across sort of the professional sphere. And companies are sort of relooking and reevaluating what they've been doing in the past and realizing that, hey, some of these things that have been done in the past are no longer acceptable. And we must be changing the structures, the systems, and the designs that we've built in the past for what we really want a better normal to be looking like. And of course, you know, this is something that I'm sure you all are familiar with, but you know, overnight, in just a couple of weeks, you know, a lot of companies have had to pivot from typically brick and mortar business or a physical face-to-face type business to go completely remote, right? So people were not allowed to get together. And what does that mean? If you think about yourself as a boss, right? For me, it's, how do I make sure that my team is motivated and continues to be driven by the mission when they don't get that sort of face-to-face interaction and sort of the face time with me? How do I make sure that people are getting what they need, the support that they need, even as they go through difficulties in their own households? So this gives you a little bit of perspective of, you know, the viewpoint of what the challenges are. I did want to scope that out because what that means for you then, which is what I want to discuss today, is number one, very key here, is the acceleration of digitization, right? So it's been clear that over the years, there's been a lot of roles. You think about, if you're thinking about finance, right, that bank teller, today, you don't really need to go to the bank to do a lot of transactions anymore. And in fact, the rise of fintech, some of you actually joined me on my talk. I think Ali joined me yesterday as well, where we talked about the rise of fintech, right, which created a lot of new opportunities and options for people when we're thinking about taking out loans, writing checks, you know, making transfers and doing all that's necessary. The acceleration of digitization has removed a lot of of roles, right? But at the same time, it's also created a lot of new opportunities. So the question is, what are the jobs and what are the options that you're thinking for yourself that is built not just for the next 2 to 3 years, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of your career journey. But ideally, when I know this is early days in your sort of journey of thinking about your career in university and all that, but your career choices, your first career choice is an important one, and it does set you up for the next couple of years, and you want to make a bet that you think will hopefully last and will be a resilient one. So some of the things to think about. And at the same time, what's been good about this time is that there's a lot of more opportunities for you to stand out. I'll give a couple of examples later, but I bring on interns all the time. And one of my interns actually came to me with, she's a student at Cornell, but she was able to send me her portfolio of everything she's done. And she's only, I think she's 19. But she was able to share with me that because of this project that she took on in working with the university endowment at Cornell, she was able to research the entire industry and boast of her own LinkedIn network of all the VCs that even some of them, I think I don't even have connection to. And that impressed me, right? And she's just a student. So even if you think, oh, but how do I stand out? If, my intern, Mardia, can do that, I'm sure you can too. And I'm happy to jump into a little bit of what you can do and what the steps are in doing this practically. But also, of course, this means, as I said, it's increased competition, right? So there's a wider supply of talent from an employer's perspective. If you're looking to join a firm, or even if you're looking to start your own business, right? There's going to be so many more businesses that are popping up. I mean, if you're thinking of building a small business on Instagram or on Facebook, they're overnight with COVID. So many other businesses have popped up. And what that means is then you got to be smarter with the choices that you make and the investments that you make to really stand out. So moving forward, few key things that you can do right now. Number one, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but if you guys, you women, you ladies, girls are not on LinkedIn, do that. Number one right now. Make sure you have a professional photo and make sure that you put in the necessary sort of experiences that you've gained, even if it's like working at your father's company, working at a cafe, or doing a certain project. Think about what is it that you can brand yourself with to make sure that you can be seen online, and building your professional, and I stress on this, right? Professional digital presence. I know there are a lot of Gen Zs here on the line, so you're probably on Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. And just remember that whatever you put on there, it's got to be seen even by your employer. I can guarantee you, because I do that. I make sure that when I'm bringing someone on board, I do my diligence. And if, so even though you think it's a personal account, if some parts of it is made public, you want to be very careful about that. So I know it's tough, especially if you're thinking about, I'm young, I want to do whatever I want to do. Just remember that unfortunately, I think Izana and I are from a slightly older generation. So we're lucky in that not all of our entire childhood and university life, a little bit maybe, back then it was Friendster, but not all of it is online, which means we could survive with a little bit of, some privacy there. But today, there is no real privacy. And of course, you control that. So be careful about that. But building your professional digital presence is so, so important. And especially today, I know you all have sort of opportunities with your university, but make sure that, you have a digital CV to back you up, right? So the likelihood today for myself as an employer, if I think about how I even review someone, right? Even before I talk to them, the first thing I do is I don't look at their CV. I look at their LinkedIn, I do a quick search and sort of have a sense of, okay, what has this person done? What are the testimonials? What are people saying about this person? And I can speak a little bit more about how you can improve that. But that's one of the key things that you can do right now. And you can add me on LinkedIn as well, and happy to, help expand your reach there. But, that's number one. Number two is you can do your research, right? So this is a good time for you to get into what you've been putting off for a very long time. So if you're looking to get into the venture capital industry, I've got a whole list of books that I can share with you. And it's a tough industry to get in, right? So this is a time to really think about, what is it that I want to do? What do I think I'm interested in? And do your research. And if you're able, that brings me to the fourth point. So I'm skipping a little bit, but can you start a project that's relevant to this? So sharing with you another one of my, I have a lot of amazing interns, but another one of my interns, and internship is a great thing to do, right? So even if you have an opportunity to do, even if it's like a 2-week, 3 months in a fellowship, whatever, jump at the opportunity, because it gives you a chance to see if this is really something that you want to do. You know, sharing about myself, when I was in university, so I read law in King's College London, and I thought my big dream was to be a big partner at a major corporate M&A firm. And I interned with Baker McKenzie, Norton Rose, and it was super competitive. I can still remember this. I probably applied to, I think, 30 firms and got a, you know, in London. So it's so competitive. And I can imagine this to be the case today as well. But I got in finally to, I think I had 5, and then I chose 2 from that lot. But I realized very quickly that while I love reading law, I was probably not suited to be a lawyer. I was very much interested in the business discussions. I was more inclined to, you know, I was the intern taking notes and all that. I was so excited with meetings with the entrepreneurs that we were working with, right? About thinking about growth and scaling businesses. And that sort of gave me a tip that, hey, you know, maybe I'm on the commercial end. Maybe I'm not the intern that's going to be, you know, the law firm partner at the end of the road. So, you know, these are things that you can take on. And I did want to add with one of the projects that my intern, this is another one that is from Georgetown University. And one of the things that they get to do, and you can start this out yourself as well, but this was, I think a professor helps to mentor some of these students. So there's a specific class for it, but they started what's called a book project. So by the end of university, these young girls would have become authors of books and are able to say that I researched this thing and I published a book. So Karina Chan, for example, she's one of my interns that has now gone into the workforce, but she wrote a book on women in VC. And her longer term game is she wanted to go into venture capital. But what that book project allowed her to do was to interview a lot of women in VC. And how do you think that's going to work out for her? That works out well, right? Because by the end of it, she has people that she can call upon. And I did want to say that as a student, you want to remember that a lot of working professionals view you very favorably, especially if you're a student. And we always want to help you. Most people, okay, let me put it this way. Most people will want to help a student. So take this opportunity, especially if you're in school and you have time to take on a new project. It can be even a blog, right? I get approached by a lot of young women these days to, you know, be part of their podcasts, right? Podcast is popular these days. What else? Interview series and things like that. And as much as possible, I will try to oblige, but you know, those are great ways that you can connect with people and really expand your reach. And back to number 1, build your professional digital presence, right? Because then you can say, hey, I've interviewed this person, this like amazing person, and this is what I learned. And this is captured, my style of writing and my capabilities are captured in this blog post, in this site. And you want to spend time on that, right? So even if you're not going into marketing or whatever, I have to say that in your career, there is, I'm sure many would think otherwise, but my personal view is in your career, a lot of what you do is sales. It is packaging yourself. It is marketing yourself or your product or whatever it is. So even if you're a coder, you have to package yourself so that you're the best coder. And then you want to think about, okay, what area do I want to be known for, right? So thinking of yourself in that way as a product and how you can market yourself, how you can position yourself, I think is a very helpful thing to do. And that brings me to the last point, which is number 3, always think about expanding your knowledge and skill sets at this time, especially if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling like, oh, things are moving so slowly. I was supposed to go for this course, this thing, but it's not happening for me. Think about what you can do online, right? So there's a lot of resources today, which is pretty good actually, that helps you get a sense of what it is you want to do, right? So if you think maybe I want to be a digital marketer, I want to learn the skill sets, and that's very much in high demand today. What can I be doing today to help me get to that next step? And what certifications can you actually get? You know, a lot of these things have gone online today, and these are some of the resources I did want to point to. Coursera, Udacity, edX, of course, TED Talks are things you can listen to understand, I would say, at a high level, a surface level, you know, what topics interest you, and you can dive deeper, but they're definitely a good time and a good thing to invest your time in. Google actually has a couple of new workshops that they're coming up with. So check out Eventbrite. That's the last thing that I actually added on here. But Eventbrite is a platform, if you don't already use it, that has a lot of events. We use it a lot, but it's a good way to search for things that today are happening outside of Malaysia, outside of Pakistan, that you may want to listen to, that works with your time zone, and you can learn something new about, you know, especially this time. Actually, I think it's great because a lot of decision makers, like I've been able to get on the phone with a lot of CIOs and CEOs that were not able to make time for me before because I was on a jet, they were on a jet, whatever. But to see them, and I feel like, especially, you know, with things like this, it's also a little bit personal, right? The opportunity for you to see someone like me on a conference may have been possible, but to have this sort of closed session where, you know, I'm reading your questions and it's very much a one-to-one thing, that's very different in experience, and you get a lot more. So take full opportunity of this, and also try to, I know this can be overwhelming, but try to build this into the habits that you want to inculcate in yourself, right? So like for me, if I say, you know, every month I want to try to do at least three top events that will help me advance in this specific area, I actually put that in my calendar so that I own up to it, to myself, right? And I hold myself accountable. So doing things like this and programming that into your system, I think that's a good way to get started. But yeah, so this is, I had, I think, 10 minutes, and that was a very quick rundown for you on my thoughts on reskilling, upskilling. But yeah, you know, I started with RBG, and I did want to end with RBG and then open up for Q&A with Alice and Izana, who's moderating me. But this is a quote that I absolutely love, which is, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made, and it shouldn't be that women are the exception." And I hope that you take it upon yourself to be one of those women in those decision-making positions and taking those practical steps that will hopefully get you in that space. So with that, thank you so much for listening to me, and I am happy to pass it over to Izana or Alice.
Thanks, Sarah, for that wonderful presentation and for ending at that powerful note from that quote by RBG, "Rest in Power." So yeah, again, thank you so much for sharing your insights on upskilling. I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like I definitely needed that. It's, you know, I just feel like so many things has changed, and, you know, things are still constantly changing. It's good to get like a temperature check to understand your environment a little better, and, you know, what you can do to adapt and be nimble around it. So yeah, without taking up much time, I will be passing it on to Izana, who will be moderating today's Q&A session with Sarah.
Thank you so much, Alice. Can you hear me properly? Okay, cool. Sarah, thank you so much. You know, I love you personally, but professionally, you're a great woman that I think many of our audience can really admire. Your focus, your tenacity, and the perseverance to get things done. I mean, I've known you for a long time. So when we were, as a team, when we were looking for speakers for this theme, when we had proposed your name, the girls were like, yes, Sarah's definitely the girl to talk about this. And, thank you so much. I know it's late. My apologies to Michael for taking up your evening, but your insight is something that our team and our men and women who are online now, and hopefully those who watch later, can really learn from. So let's get into some of the Q&A that we've had. We've listed out, it's a mix of what the team wants to know and also the audience who sent in some questions earlier. We want to backtrack a little bit to your journey. And we really want to know, what was that aha moment that inspired you to start Beyond the Billion? If you can talk to us a little bit about the journey, how you moved from $1 billion fund to Beyond the Billion.
Sure, thanks, Sienna. So how far do you want me to go back?
The Sparks notes, because I think it's really important for people to know your journey a little bit.
Okay, so the Sparks notes, I'll do it from Malaysia very quickly. Some of you know I work with Izana actually to start Lean in Malaysia, which some of you may know, which is another women empowerment platform. Focus, I would say, for women who are looking to scale up into women in leadership. And also at the beginning, we were also focused on getting women who took a career break and were looking to get back into the workforce. So let me start with that. I had the opportunity, and I think this is relevant because my career in venture capital and my career as a feminist are both accidental. Which is unexpected, but I started with I was working with Sime Darby at the time. I was a young executive and I was ambitious, right? I was hungry to do more, and I was very concerned that I felt like I wasn't moving too much. And I looked around me and I said, hey, there must be some young vice president or executive vice president that I can go and speak to and gain inspiration from. And this person turned out to be Azli Razali, who's still there, and one of my favorite bosses that I learned a lot from. But he was one of the youngest VPs in Sime Darby, and my full intention was to just get a coffee with him to learn from his experience. And lo and behold, he picked that opportunity up where I was literally just asking for a coffee, and said, okay, show me, hey, if we were to calculate the number of ping pong balls that could fit in a Boeing 747, what would that look like? So he basically turned my coffee session into an interview. And within that, after that 30 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour or so, he said, okay, I'm going to hire you. You're going to come on my team. I have this venture capital thing that I'm trying to do. Don't know if it'll work out, but you read law, right? So it could be useful for us. And I said, I'm game, let's do it. And he may have angered a few people by cutting bureaucracy, but this is what you have to do, right? So getting the paperwork, he got my CV and said, I'm bringing her on my team. And that was my beginning. And he literally gave me, I have so much gratitude for him, because I was 23, 24 at that time. And he gave me so much latitude that I realized today, to be able to, I was negotiating contracts with 60-year-old, 50 to 60-year-old CEOs to make investments in them. And this was my first deal that I did, was like a $30 million deal. And that ended up, creating relationships that some of my best friends on my WhatsApp now are the CEOs that I invested in, because they had such a good experience with me. And they personally told me, hey, Sarah, when we first started talking to you and negotiating over the phone, back then Zoom wasn't popular. So they only heard my voice and my ability to negotiate, some of these clauses, this is a non-negotiable, I was always proud of my no-nonsense style of trying to get the best deal for my company. And they remember that. And they said, I didn't realize I was negotiating with a 24-year-old, this 60-year-old guy. But that was fantastic, right? So that set me up, right? So that set me up to think about, okay, I think I really like investing. This is awesome. This is I can negotiate. I can think about building companies and all that. So I sort of fell into it. And then very quickly, I looked around me, and I was, I'm not the technical person. I actually depended on a lot of senior engineers and scientists that were women in the company. And they would always say, hey, Sarah, why don't you present this for us? You speak so well, go and speak. And I was really taken aback, because then I realized, hey, I'm the one that's staying late. And then very quickly, I realized I'm the only woman in the team because, you know, after a while, the women had to rush home to take care of dinner and all those things. And I wondered, hey, these men are also married. Why aren't they going home? You know, I was single at that time, but
Ding, ding, ding.
this,
That's a very good
right,
question. Yep.
right. So this is where you really understand that the domestic responsibilities, even till today in Malaysia, is not equally shared. And the expectation of a woman holds her back, right? And this is exactly what I wanted to address, you know, because I was seeing all these smart women, I was depending on them for their technical diligence, and they never wanted to be seen because also, again, in countries like Malaysia, I see this where ambition can be a bad thing, right? So you can be seen to be too aggressive, too assertive, and then people might not like you and all this thing. So this is all real, but these are all issues that sparked the fire in me. And lo and behold, comes in a young lady, Abir Abdul Rahim, who was my co-founder, who is my co-founder at Lean in Malaysia, who was reading this book of Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg and was also NC to get something started. And I said, okay, you know, I'm in, let's figure this out. And we literally rallied other women. And I think I saw Afifa on the lines, Afifa, Izana, and all this, and said, let's do something big here. So we started with a, so then the point that I wanted to bring in was Abir came to me, and if some of you don't know Lean In, it's about, you know, women leaning in to their ambition, right? And that's exactly what I saw the women around me not do. And I thought it was compelling for us to think about how can we create a platform where women can be the best version of themselves, whatever that choice is, right? So I'm all for, you know, I fully respect women as housewives and mothers because it's so important. It is the groundwork that needs to build, that is to build our future generation. But what we don't have a lot of times in countries like Malaysia, and I see some women from Africa as well, is that choice, right? It needs to be her choice, that I want to do this for myself, not pressured into it, not because my husband thinks it's manis that I do this. And I've heard this many times. So, you know, that's what really got the fire started. And we started by saying, okay, let's put forward role models. Let's bring Dato' Zuraida at that time to speak about her career and getting into the, I think it was Bursa at that time, to be the director of Bursa. And that really got us started because we, you know, posted on Facebook and said, okay, maybe 30 people will show up, 20 or 10, don't know, you know, it's just a dinner, but we'll bring our women and we want to hear from you. Same thing as what you're doing here. And ended up, it was 80 women and men that showed up, and it showed us that, hey, we're onto something. Young men and women in Malaysia are ambitious and just need to figure out how. And that got us started on the journey to Lean in Malaysia. And I'm coming to the end here, so we're really sprinting through the end. But long story short, you know, don't take for granted a lot of the opportunities and your experiences. You might not see it now, but the dots connect backwards when you're, you know, looking at your life. And that was the case for me, because what happened was that Izana knows this because she helped me to screen my husband. And it is a very important choice that you will make. You know, one of the most important career decisions, I would say, as a woman, is your partner that you choose. But what happened was I was doing all this investing. I had an opportunity to, we grew Lean in Malaysia so big that Sheryl Sandberg invited Abir and myself to go and have dinner with her. And on that one trip, when I had the opportunity to visit my portfolio companies and go see Sheryl Sandberg, I missed my flight, and then I met my husband. And long story short, this is why I'm here. And if you recall, I went to university in London. I had no dealings in America whatsoever, other than investing in those 50, 60-year-old guys. And I had to literally just build myself up and hustle for the last couple of years. And I still think I'm continuing to hustle. I don't know when it will end. But
never, it will never end.
Never. Oh, Lord, help. I'll be speaking to girls at 11 p.m. But long story, long story short, I combined, you know, it was the realization of feminism and then venture capital, which was the two worlds. And that really got me started on the $1 billion fund for women, because I realized that the gender venture investment gap was so dire, even in US, even in America, where it's only 3%. And I met my co-founder through networking, by the way. So this is a lot of tips there. But I met Shelly through networking, and I was invited to be a board member of this women's empowerment organization in DC for women entrepreneurs. And we came together. We had an opportunity to present at the World Bank meetings about a new initiative addressing gender, SDG 5. And we said, well, these are two areas that we care about, which is women and venture capital, because venture capital is building whatever we're using today. The Zoom platform is venture backed. And we wanted to make sure that women were part of the equation in shaping the technologies that we use and shaping the future. And, if women are only getting 3%, 3 cents to a dollar, we talk a lot about the gender pay gap, but what about the gender venture investment gap? And it's not a deal flow problem. This is one thing that we see for sure, where there are so many women innovators, but because of a lot of things, and we can get into that, but long story short, I started the $1 Billion Fund for Women, didn't know what would happen, but we rallied funds because of my contacts back in the day, right? VC, talk about LinkedIn, talk about building your network and all that. Shelly and I were able to mobilize within, I want to say 2 months, 460 million to be invested into women-founded companies by venture capital funds. So these were funds that were not necessarily investing into women even before as a gender lens strategy or anything like that. And that's how we got started, which was the message that we need to radically change the system, not by waiting to hire, and it's important to cultivate and groom women to strive for leadership, but more than anything, we wanted to change things right now. So how can we get the VC firms right now to say, I'm going to invest? So that's what we did with the $1 Billion Fund for Women. And part two, which is beyond the billion, your question, Izana, is, when we were working deeper in the problem set, we understood that it's not only an issue that stops at what we call the general partners, so the fund managers, the VCs that invest into the entrepreneurs and the founders, but it's also the question of who then invests into these funds. Are these funds that are investing into women founders getting funded, and is there a robust cycle of capital? And the answer is, of course, there isn't. Women and underrepresented funders only in the US own and manage 1.3% of all financial assets. So, there's so much more to be done, but right now, my focus is with like the pension funds and the sovereign wealth funds and the financial institutions that invest into the funds. And in turn, we're trying to uplift the standards. So making sure that the investor into the funds then demand that, hey, you need to have gender diversity as your strategy. So that's a very long story, but there you have it.
You are the most efficient speaker I've had, because as you're speaking, I'm going through my list of questions. I'm like, hey, she's answered. No, that's an amazing story. So a couple of golden nuggets that I picked up was going back to the start of your career is always to be ready. Whenever you ask for that coffee session, you never know whether your stars will align and you might meet that next opportunity. Be ready to answer that brain teaser question that might lead you to the next opportunity. And then it's clear that perseverance, that the hustle vibe, hustle DNA is there throughout your journey. So thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I want to ask if you can share a little bit, the industry that you're in is a tough one, VC industry. And despite efforts to increase diversity, there's still gender gap. And, how do you deal with a couple of things? I'm sure I know personally you've had to deal with a series of rejections or the no's thrown at you. How do you deal with that? How do you pick yourself up and grow from that experience? And also, if you can just touch at the end of that, answering that question, how do you handle the doubts targeted towards you and your goals and some of the skepticism from public? And I know you've gotten this before, specifically from the men. I know a bit about your journey, so I want to tease out some of the tough times you've handled, because I think you've handled them well. If you can share with our audience a little bit.
Thank you. So I've had to learn a little bit, and I have to say my husband gives me a very hard time because so he used to help politicians with their campaigns. So everything I say can and will be used against me. So I continue to be trained. So if you have someone at home that helps you actually in a Q&A and things like that, I think that's important to test out and even ask yourself, try your answers for rejections. But I've had to train myself, frankly. You know, in the beginning, we had questions. I still get questions from men like this, right? So Sarah, you have the $1 billion fund for women. How about the $1 billion fund for men? And my answer is, thank you very much for that acknowledgement. You know, I love the $1 billion fund for women and what we're doing, and I'm proud of what we're doing. And frankly, men have been getting the billions all this while. So you already have the $1 billion fund for men. So I think it's time for women. And that is my answer. I smile and I walk away. And then they're puzzled and all of the above. But, you know, I think there's a way to handle rejection with grace, and you have to. I've done this as well. I think you can see this one where a man basically goes on a rant about demographics and how ambitious women are creating the demographic issue, i.e. not enough children being born because women don't want to give birth because they're ambitious, right? So these sort of things have come to me, and this is in America as well, by the way. And, you know, when people make statements, sometimes I have to choose whether I want to respond to them. And sometimes I say, sorry, was that a question? And then I move on, right? So sometimes you choose to engage, sometimes you don't. But along the way, you will get a lot of no's. And like I told you, even in my internship, so a lot of you in university, man, I applied to so many. I can't even remember. I don't even know what I wrote, but I take it as it's part of the game, right? It's nothing personal. It's about fit, whatever fit means. And fit, by the way, can be unconscious bias as well. So there's this thing in the financial industry, which we call pattern matching, right? So we look at the patterns that will result into the success metrics that we desire. And a lot of times those patterns do not include women because they've never been in the system, and therefore they are not a pattern of success. So, you know, being very clear about some of these things. But I think, you know, if you take it as I want to achieve a goal, I'm going to have to just jump through a couple of hoops to get there. And if you're determined, I think you will get through, because I think what's key is your mission and the core, you know, the core of the asas of what you want to do, your basis has to be strong enough, your root, to then say that, okay, this is just, you know, something that's gonna just a chip on my shoulder, and that's fine, you know, just like shrug it off. And like that donkey, that story, I don't know, it's a peribahasa or whatever, you shake it off and then you climb on top of that dust, right? So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, rejection is hard. I still have days where I'm like, oh, why? But you know, you just snap out of it. Tomorrow is another day, and there will be so many others that will say yes. And frankly, the story with the $1 billion fund for women, Shelley and I really honed into those that were quick to say yes to us, and we were sort of assessing as well, okay, will this be a likely yes or no, and thinking about how much time do I want to spend on this target, for example, right? So even as you're thinking about your career, your options, think about it as, okay, which is a likely target, right? I like to put in the red, yellow, and green, right? So is this person yellow that can tip over the green, or is this person very red, right? So it's a no-go. And then once you get your successes, and this is a tip that one of my friends shared with me actually, to create a win jar. So whenever, like when all of you send notes to me, I keep that, I print that out, I put it in the jar. On days where it's bad, I pick that up and I say, hey, I made a difference in someone's life. You know, when days that you doubt yourself, like, okay, I did something right. Let's see what I can dig out of here and move forward.
I love that, create a win jar. I think that's something that we all should have to keep us going. We all need some kind of structure and system beyond our tribe and support system, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I'm going to jump into some of the questions that were sent in through the registration form. So it might bounce off a little from the conversation. One question here is, some of us are unfortunate enough to have gotten our salary cut after or during the pandemic. What are the skills or alternatives that we can do to help our finances? This is a question that's actually quite relevant in the genesis of why we wanted to set this theme. This is what majority of the people globally are going through. So I think it's applicable to our international audience as well.
Thanks for that question, Zana. And I think that's a very important one. So I think one of the things that you want to evaluate is if it's a short-term cut, you know, what does that mean, right? Having some, and I know it's a tough time, but employers have to be fair to a certain extent. If you're working for an established company, I've seen that here where they have to sort of give you a little bit of a heads up, right? What's the fair, whatever the fair labor practice is, you need to take that into mind, but have a very serious and honest conversation with whoever your boss is in terms of, okay, what does this mean, right? And a lot of people actually have seen this. They get their salaries cut, but the job is still the same, and that's completely unfair. The expectation is still the same. And when you're working virtually, man, it's difficult because there's no cutoff time, right? And you end up doing the same thing. You're still working 9 to 5 and you're getting half the salary. That's not fair. So having, number one, I think you need to have a very honest conversation with your boss, set expectations on, okay, if this is 50% of my time, what 50% am I giving up? What does this mean? But at the same time, how can I also ensure that I'm doing what's required of me to prove that I'm still in this, right? Because if you still want that job, you want to be able to say and prove to your employer that, you know, you're a loyal employee. And I think that's a quality that's really hard to come by these days. So that's something that I can't give you specific advice to, but, you know, think about the balance of loyalty and also thinking about what's best for you, right? So number one, have that honest conversation. Once you have that, you have a little bit of a gauge, right? So if you have a good boss, they'll say, okay, this is for 3 months. Within the next 3 months, we'll reassess. And this is, you know, only a temporary measure. But if it's like a boss that's like, I'm really not sure, we'll see how it goes, then you're uncertain, right? So you want to look at options straight away. And what could those options be? Take this time to think about what are your priorities, right? So a lot of us actually don't have the luxury, and I want to make sure that we not do that. We don't have the luxury to do at this time what we want to do, but we have to feed our families. We have to put food on the table. So what's the easy thing that you can do at this time with whatever, say the 50% of tasks that you still have to do, and put food on the table? If that means that you go and take on a part-time role, a contractor role to do something light, that's fine in the meantime, but always have a plan, right? If you want to take this time to then transition into something else where perhaps you have a little bit more flexibility where you can take that risk, use this time to look at, okay, what are part-time roles that fit into some of the skill sets that I have that is actually what I want to potentially pivot to. And this is something that, again, you know, back to the point of what are the jobs that will be resilient moving forward from this crisis, and then actually taking steps to do this. And I have been in this position before, but I always say this, you know, applying for another job is another full-time job in itself. But back to habits, block out time. It is important. 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, whatever it is, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, make sure you calendar that and honor that, right? So it can be really demotivating at times, but start by looking through your network. If you're not on groups that you're interested in, you should be at this time. So think about tech startup groups, right? Eventbrite, meetups, Facebook has a lot of other groups, LinkedIn has some groups. Think about that and speak to some of the people who are doing things that you see that you want to do, and ask them for some tips as well on how you can get into that at this time. But yeah, I think those are, you know, be practical, but at the same time, if you have a little bit of luxury to go to the next step of, okay, maybe this is an opportunity to pivot, you know, by all means do so.
I wish I had your time for like 2-3 hours. There's so many good questions coming in. I want to ask you 2 more questions if I can borrow your time, maybe 15 minutes past 12. Another question, which seems to be a consistent one, is there are many people who are starting over as a result of COVID-19, who's lost their job and all of that. What is your advice for some people who's starting a business at the age of 40? Is that a good thing? What advice would you give to people who are older? How do you get startup funding for products that are being developed? If you can speak a little bit about that.
Sure. So I actually posted this recently, so picking on that, but entrepreneurship is not something that only Zuckerberg can be successful in, right? You look at Vera Wang, she actually I think she was 40 that she actually became a fashion designer and really built her brand. So there are a lot of success stories of entrepreneurs at different stages of their lives, right? And arguably there are different things that you bring to the table as someone, to my point of diversity and why we need diversity is everyone comes with different experiences, and who you were when you were 15 to 25 to 35 to 45, I can only imagine for you as it is for me is drastically different, right? I look at myself like, some core qualities are the same, but wow, how have I grown? How have I learned? And how have I made mistakes that has taught me what I should be doing moving forward, and what I want to hone into. So I think that there's, ageism. I really hate that. Frankly, I benefit. Oh, something to share. Okay, I shouldn't say her age, but my co-founder is at least 30 years. We have a 30-year age gap there, but she treats me as an equal as I do her. Of course, I have tremendous respect for her, but it is such an amazing partnership where we feed off each other, right? So there are things that clearly she's good at, things that I'm good at, and that's what makes it work. But this is where intergenerational relationships are really something to think about. And I think, don't be afraid of starting afresh. In some way, I think that I've been pretty crazy to do what I have. I have no family other than my husband and his side of the family, no friends when I started. Literally no network, and I had to build it up. It was hard as anything, but I figured it out, right? So I always say, even if the path is not clear for you, always trust in yourself to figure it out and put one step up in front of the other. But in building a business, I personally, and this is not a belief that's shared by everyone, but I personally believe that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It is a very hard journey. And you want to think, for me, I know for myself, for example, that I do better in duo teams. So I like having a co-founder. I don't think I will do well as a solo founder because I get energy of seeing each other, having another person in the pit with me. And that helps me move forward, and I grow exponentially, and I see that. But some people, they like to work on their own and all that. So it is a very hard journey. That will be, especially in this time, right? It's so competitive. Everybody is going to start a new business at this time, but you want to be very, very sure that, you know what your purpose is, right? So in anything, that's my principle in life. In anything that you do, what is your purpose? In starting a business, if it's to feed your family, do what's necessary. Do you really need venture capital? Think about that. There's a lot of businesses that has been bootstrapped, that didn't have to give up their rights to investors. Today there's a lot of the image of venture capital equivalent to success is really unhealthy, because it really isn't. Venture capital is not for all businesses. It is primarily for tech-based scalable businesses that address, the first thing that I as an investor will ask is, okay, what's the market size here? What's the target here? And if it's less than a certain amount, depending on which investor you talk to, I'm not interested. Because for me, I'm incentivized purely by financial returns. Of course, I want to work well with my founders and all that. But if you think about the core of the business of venture capital, it is to make money off you, right? So, think about what that means, and how do you want to position yourself for success. There's, a lot of other options, from grants to loans to different other, even like crowdfunding, things like that you can look into. So I urge you first to ask what your purpose is. Is it to make a lot of money? Is it to make just enough in this time? Because if it's just for you, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. If it's a small business, small businesses have literally built our economy. If it's a small business, you want to think about making sure that you are managing your costs, which means there's a lot of things that you have to do on your own, right? So whether that's, when we were starting out, I was A, B, C, and D, right? So I was the marketer, I was the person in front of the camera, I was the person creating whatever our website had to be. And I'm not a website designer, but I had to figure it out, right? So, talking about upskilling, I learned so many skills that when I started as a law student, I didn't expect I would be doing all these things. but it opens up a lot of opportunities. And the good news is, if you already know how to do it, next time when you're the boss, you know what's right, what's wrong, and you can verify. So yeah, hope that helps.
I love the just do it mindset. And I can attest to that. I have seen Sarah learn through so many different skills. She's like, you know what, never mind, roll up the sleeves and just do it. So definitely walking the talk. I'm going to ask you one last question, which is asked by Shahira, because I think I know your answer to this, and that's definitely a message I want our audience to hear. So the question is, can you walk us through your thought process in setting goals? How do you balance between being ambitious versus being realistic? If you can share with us this journey, and we can wrap it up after that.
Okay. How do I make my goals? I have to say it's changed over the years, but I've always been a goal setter. I don't know if this is healthy to share with all of you, because I don't highly recommend it. Sometimes the paths that I choose, it's like, oh my goodness, I wish this upon no one. Like, I've been through it, but I really sincerely wish this upon no one. But what I do is I actually started with an Excel spreadsheet. So in my 20s, I had like 25, these were the key goals in different sections. So personal, professional, and finance, depending how you break it up. But basically I had financial goals, personal goals, so like relationships, family, things like that, and professional goals. And a lot of times they're all interconnected, right? But I literally have line items of what that looks like. And it sometimes I would share it with my, before I was married, I would share it with my brother and my mother. Those are my closest, my people, right? And they would give me feedback on it. This is what we were doing since we were children. So actually I really tip my hat off to my parents, where they put that in our DNA. But I would get feedback from them on, okay, what does it sound like? And my goal would, of course, always include, how can I support my brother as well, for example? And is this, so therefore I needed to make sure, okay, is this in line with what you want to do? How can I carve out some time, like to, even tomorrow I have to help him with some legal contract because it's in my goal to help him continue to grow his brand and all these things, right? So it's my commitment to my family. But I have line items that I put, and then at the end of every year I reevaluate, and then I think through, okay, was this a realistic goal? But it's literally over a period of time that I look at the patterns on, okay, this was completely unrealistic. But the good news is, even though there were goals that I totally did not reach, so, last time when I was younger, I did, right? Okay, I wanted to get married by a certain time. Every year, fail. And then finally I got it. But so the point is, even if you don't get it in the first year that you planned for, having it in there ensures that you get to the next stage. And I think it's all, if you believe in law of attraction, that's what it is, right? So I mean, I'm giving you a very, you guys are getting me at 12 midnight. So
I love it.
A very personal answer. But, get feedback from your friends, your peers. And I must say this though, there will be things that people don't recognize in you yet that you might see in yourself, and vice versa, and take that very seriously, right? So there might be some things where your parents may say, oh my goodness, what are you even saying? Like, I don't get that. But so for example, like, oh, TikTok, this is a new thing. They don't get it. But my intern made $30,000 on TikTok, like last month, selling some hat. So,
wow,
there's
I'm on the wrong platform.
Right. A lot of new things that have opened up that some, perhaps older generations or some other people don't get it. But if you believe in it and you see the core of what you want to do, come back to it. But I have to say, I've started a group called Mastermind, where it's a group of C-level executives, peers that I lean on personally for my development. And that's been super helpful to me to hold me accountable as well, because I wanted to make sure that I scale. And if you get to, I've come to a point where I feel, because I'm at the helm of my organization with Shelly, of course, but I felt like I wanted to learn from someone else. I was craving that. And so I built a community around me to say, okay, this is BS, basically. You better go and get this. Don't accept anything less than 50%. And, our group has basically said to each other, I'm not accepting what you're saying to me, and pushing each other to do better. And, you know, this other woman has literally upped her prices by 40% because of something we encouraged her to do and that we didn't expect. But it's about how can you create goals that you can meet, and also have others around you hold you accountable if you need that sort of thing. So hope that's helpful. I mean, I can expand a little bit more, but yeah, hope that's a
No,
starting
thank you,
point.
Sarah. It's about having a tribe. If you're the Excel kind of person, do the Excel review, because not everything could be achieved in a year. For example, finding a husband for some of you there. But yeah, also having accountability partners, right, in friends and also your other half. So Sarah, it has been ridiculously insightful, especially considering it's midnight on your end. Thank you so much for making time, being present, and really sharing a huge part of you here with us. I'm seeing even in WhatsApp chats, our mutual friends are saying that Fuse actually pointed out that she's
Oh my goodness.
this session, she's hearing stories about you we didn't even know from before, and we've known you for a while through your journey. So seriously, thank you so much. One last thing to wrap up. What is your one-liner? I know you're a quote woman. So what is your one-liner life mantra that keeps you going through tough times?
Wow. Just one. I have to say it changes depending on the season of my life, right? But I think one thing that I really look to these days, especially when, you know, it's hard, is go back to your core and your purpose, and always trust in yourself first. Always trust that you will figure it out no matter what, because look at how far you've come. Look at all that you've achieved. And don't just stop there, because if you've gone through all of this, is this all that you didn't go all this way to just get this far. So that is, I guess as a whole, my life mantra. It's not exactly a notable quotable, but that's my life mantra for now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We've got Marianne from Uganda says thank you. She's part of our G4G network. We've got some global members who joined us who woke up at 6 a.m. in Uganda to listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for making time for us. My team is reminding me to set polls because I forgot the last webinar. Sorry about that. Okay, so thank you so much, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can give us maybe 1 minute of your time to just answer a 3-question poll. I think I have sent it out. If you can just answer, it's a very simple 3-question thing. I'll put on some music. Also, don't leave yet. I want to take a group picture if you don't mind. Alrighty, thank you so much everyone for your amazing poll. Sarah, you are on point. Everyone is giving us great feedback. And most importantly, well, not most importantly, but there's a whole bunch of girls chatting on WhatsApp. We love your dress. Always on point with your outfits. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna do a screenshot of us here today. So if you'd like to be part of the picture, please open up your videos. I'm gonna do a screenshot. There's 2-3 slides I've got to take. So for those of you who are online, and even if you're masked, I can see your beautiful eyes. So I'm gonna start taking a picture. 1, 2, smile. Okay, 1 second. That's the first page. And just the second one, keep smiling because you and I are not on the same page. 1 and 2. 1, 2, smile. Alrighty, thank you so very much, Sarah, sincerely for making time for us today. It is 12:15. Thank you for your time on a Friday night. I really wish we had 2 hours, but I'm looking forward to the next time you and I catch up. There's so much more for us to chat, but thank you. Our African sisters are all running off because it's the early morning, but thank you to you in DC. And thank you everyone for making it today. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.